Senator Rosen, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Peters. Appreciate the second round. Appreciate our witnesses staying around. It's really important. And I actually want to build on Chairman Peters, some of his earlier questioning on our digital spaces, our online. And we know that digital spaces are just fueling the rise in domestic terrorism. You know, extremists, they try to exploit the internet to recruit, to franchise, and of course, unfortunately, to plot attacks. So Secretary Mayorkas and Director Wray, to both of you, how can Congress better empower federal law enforcement officials to combat online hate before it escalates into any real world violence? How do you work with the digital platforms, and what kind of support can we provide you with, whether it's through this committee or other committees of jurisdiction, to help you do this job? Secretary Mayorkas, you can go first.
I'd like to thank you very much, Senator Rosen. You know, I've heard Director Wray speak very compellingly about two forces on the domestic landscape that are really converging to create the increase that we have observed over the last few years. Number one is the fact that we're speaking very often of lone actors or loosely affiliated groups of individuals, not the traditional organized structures, number one. And number two, as he referenced earlier in this hearing, the fact that social media as a terrain that can so easily propagate misinformation, false information, and allow communications to occur among loosely affiliated individuals. I'd like to give some thought to and speak with our partners, Director Wray, Director Abizad, with respect to what legislation might be useful in this space. But we are working together in an all-of-government effort to increase, to address this increased threat.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I want to give you the tools you really need to protect us, and that's terrific. Director Wray, do you have some additional information you'd like to add about how you think we might help you in this space?
Well, without weighing in on a specific legislative proposal, what I would say, and I've spoken about this many times, I can't overstate the impact of default encryption and the role it's playing, including in terrorism. And what I mean by that is more and more the information that's going to allow us to, as I said to, I think, Chairman Peters earlier in an exchange, separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of social media, is being able to, with lawful process, that is appropriate court warrants, get access to those communications where the most meaningful discussion of the violence is occurring. And more technology is moving in a direction where no matter how bulletproof the affidavit in support of the warrant, no matter how ironclad the independent judicial approval, and no matter how horrific the criminal activity that's being investigated, we will be blind to it. And I think that is something that is worthy of Congress's attention.
Well, thank you. I look forward to having some more conversations with you offline about that. I want to move over and talk about a little bit about the nonprofit security grants. I know we've talked about these before, and of course the alarming rise in anti-Semitism. Again, we're talking about our domestic violent extremists here. And despite the alarming rise, the nonprofit security grants, they fulfill less than half of the applications it received for grants this year, far outstripping the $180 million that Congress provided through regular appropriations for fiscal year 2021. So, Mr. Secretary, given the growing need for the nonprofit security grant program, again, we talked earlier about the communities understanding how to best protect themselves from any attacks or make themselves any vulnerabilities that they have. How does DHS, we haven't given you enough resources. How can you fill this gap, and what else do you need for us to do?
Thank you very much, Senator. I am engaged with the faith-based community on this very issue. We are extensively so, and I am taking a look at our grant programs writ large across the board, not only the nonprofit security grants, but the urban area security initiative grant program, some of its components, and like to see how those dollars can meet the threats to ensure that any gaps are closed. I'd like to circle back with you on what we find and what other support we need. I'm very appreciative.
No, and I want to really circle back on the UASI and talking about those formulas, as I spoke about earlier with critical infrastructure. We have to think about how our UASI grants are funded, as well as the nonprofit security grants, because we have critical infrastructure in many places, and we want to be sure that those formulas reflect the broad spectrum of threats that we may see now, not especially on the cyber front and other ways. So I really appreciate, again, all of you being here. I look forward to having some more conversations and putting forth some meaningful legislation out of this committee as well as others. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you.